Can the Leafs make a trade for Timo Meier? And if they can, what would that trade look like? What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. As we kicked off the show with there, obviously, there is plenty of speculation surrounding this team right now in terms of who they might trade for and how much that might cost them at the trade deadline as we quickly approach here to March 3rd. So we will continue to break down things that go on around the league, news, rumors, all that kind of stuff that comes out about this Leafs team, and we will continue with the live post-game stream. So if you enjoy the content here, please make sure to hit subscribe on this channel. It takes about 2 seconds to do, and you can do so while you're watching this video. So hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time we go live and more content comes out here. But we will get into the basis of this video. Now, it would be very easy for me to sit here and clickbait this in terms of, could the Leafs trade for Timo Meier? What would it take? Is this something a possibility? It's obviously being talked about a lot, and the Leafs are one of those teams surrounding it. But the reason for this video here today is more so about the mock trades coming out. Now, today on the Real Kyper and Bourne show with Kyper and Justin Bourne, they talked about the possibility of Timo Meier coming to this Leafs team. Their producer proposed a trade. It went viral on Twitter, if you saw it earlier today, and he was discussing the fact that he proposed Timo Meier and Steven Lorentz for Pierre Engvall, Alex Kerfoot, Matthew Knies, a 2023 third-round pick that was from Ottawa, and a 2024 second-round pick, which is Toronto's. So, looking at this trade all in terms of what it is, I don't mind the return that you get here, obviously. Timo Meier, incredible player, probably the most sought-after player on the trade market now that Bo Horvat has moved to the New York Islanders and signed an extension there. This is the player that is the ideal fit for this Leafs team, the guy that everyone sits here and looks at and says, we need that guy. That is our difference maker. I would obviously love to get Timo Meier. Adding in Steven Lorentz I don't think is a bad thing, but let's break this down because there was a lot of people online who were in favor of the trade. They liked what the Leafs had to give up. They were okay with doing this because you got back a guy in Steven Lorentz who had an extra year. But Timo Meier, obviously, so far this season, 30 goals, 21 assists, 51 points in 50 games played, 109 hits. He leads the San Jose Sharks in hits. If he were to come to Toronto, he would lead the Toronto Maple Leafs in hits this season so far. Timo Meier is an incredible impact player. He's a left-handed left winger. He's 6 foot, 216 pounds. He's playing on the first line in San Jose and undoubtedly would fit in perfectly in the top 6 here in Toronto. And as we all know, it's not necessarily a 1-2 line. It's a 1A, 1B type of situation where any given night you could roll out a line that is hotter than the other one, and that becomes your one that night. Timo Meier would fit perfectly in there and give them the edge that they need. The things to note with Timo Meier in terms of why teams might be afraid. One, he's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. He's going to need a new contract. He's currently on a $6 million per year one right now, and at the end of this season, he would need $10 million per year. That on the qualifying offer is what is scaring off a lot of teams. They're sitting there looking, hey, he could be a rental, we could re-sign him, but can we afford to re-sign him in the offseason? That is the tough question that a lot of teams are having to ask right now. And as it stands for Timo Meier, this might be a difficult one for the Leafs to have to chew on, as this could be a guy that they just have to lose in the offseason. Now, they could trade him, trade his rights, in which you get minimal return, but you could recoup some of that draft capital that you give up. So I don't think it's the end of the world. But you do still have to give up, or you'd have to continue to give up more players in the offseason and face maybe more criticism in terms of, oh my God, I can't believe we're going to continue to pay 5 guys this much money instead of what it was at 4. And then how does that fit in the cap? It becomes very difficult to fit him into this entire situation if you have that going on. So that is a concern. Throwing in Steven Lorentz, to me, was a very interesting one. Obviously, if you trade Pierre Engvall and Alex Kerfoot, you'd like to get a roster player back, but the conversation here in Toronto recently has been that we have guys who can step up and play. Pontus Holmberg, Bobby McMann, Joey Anderson. They've all shown to be serviceable players in this lineup. So if you were to move on from this combination, hypothetically, of Pierre Engvall, Alex Kerfoot, Matthew Knies, a 2023 third-round pick, and a 2024 second-round pick, we would effectively be moving on from about $6 million. Coming back the other way would be an extra $1 million. There would be a $7 million coming back, as Steven Lorentz is on a $1 million per year contract for this season and next, on top of Timo Meier's $6 million that he's getting paid right now. So we would lose 6 and gain an extra 1 on top of that. We would take 7 back. This would be tough for the Leafs to slide, as they currently have $0 in projected cap space at this very date, at this very moment of recording this. They can obviously move things around, but there's no need to take on that extra guy. Digging into the trade a little bit further, Steven Lorentz is a fourth-line center on San Jose right now. This Leafs team isn't really looking to grab fourth-line players from other bad teams to fit in here. If anything, they're looking to grab guys who are third-line players to maybe slide guys down from our third line to the fourth line, or grab third-line guys to go into our fourth line. There is no need to grab a player who is a fourth-line player on a worse team and bring him here and slot him into our fourth line. Steven Lorentz, also in 50 games played so far this season, he has 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. He hasn't been incredible. A -11 on the season. Kind of tough to navigate what that means in terms of playing on a really bad team. But what we would be losing on the other end is Pierre Engvall, 10 goals, 8 assists, 18 points. Not mind-blowing, but still. Twice as many goals as Steven Lorentz. He has as many goals as Lorentz does points. Engvall has turned into a much more serviceable player here in Toronto, as he's a guy we can trust more defensively. He can play well alongside David Kampf in that defensive checking role on the third line there. And all in all, he can kill penalties as well. He's taken a big jump since he got that suspension earlier in the season. He's been a pretty decent player for this Leafs team. Now, Kerfoot is obviously the one that you're going to look at here and go, yes, we'd love to get rid of him. Kerfoot, 28 years old, $3.5 million AAV. He's a UFA at the end of this season. He has 7 goals, 16 assists so far in the year. He's been very, very underwhelming and a polarizing player here in Toronto, as he's a guy that a lot of people look to as, we got to get rid of that guy. Okay, fair enough. Don't mind the prospect of moving on from him, but all in all, I don't see the need to bring back Steven Lorentz in this, as it is just a negative move for this Leafs team, a guy who's not going to play in this lineup. We already have tried out Dryden Hunt, Bobby McMann, Joey Anderson, Pontus Holmberg in these lower end roles, and at least 3 of those 4 have actually played pretty well in their time with this Leafs team. So as far as bringing him back, no need for that. Now, looking at the other pieces that the Leafs were proposed to give up in this. Matthew Knies. Let's start there. Matthew Knies, 28 years old. He is the golden child of the Leafs prospects that they have. He's the one that has been deemed an untouchable, and rightly so, based on the fact that Leafs fans look and say, we need size, we need physicality, we need someone who is a power forward. Well, guess what? Matthew Knies comes in right now at 6'3", 209 pounds. He's 20 years old, and currently with the University of Minnesota in the NCAA. Matthew Knies, 30 points, 28 games played. He is what is deemed as the old-fashioned power forward. He would essentially be, hopefully, what Timo Meier is now, or what Josh Anderson is in the eyes of Leafs fans. That is kind of the goal of what Matthew Knies could be. Throwing him in this deal, I think the Leafs have zero interest in. I think they don't want to move on from him at all. And B, you are going to trade a guy for a player that you deem potentially the potential of Matthew Knies. You're going to trade Matthew Knies for a guy like Timo Meier, who you see Matthew Knies maybe getting to a point of being like that player. And you're going to acquire a player who's going to be an RFA. He's going to cost $10 million next year and likely will move on. So you might lose both guys in that process and sit here and look at it and go, oh my God, how did we do that? This is the big no-no to me in this entire thing, is the Matthew Knies situation, on top of 2 picks and 2 current roster players. Understand having to move the roster players based on money out and money in situations. I get that. And in terms of the draft picks, okay, understood, you're going to have to do that. But this quality of prospect, I think, is unreasonable for this trade. I don't see this being the case. I also see no reason for a guy like Steven Lorentz to have to come back the other way. To me, I think that we're probably on the right track of what this trade could be or what we could get here, but I think you immediately drop Lorentz and maybe you swap out Matthew Knies with a lower down prospect on this list. Especially, remember here, we are would be hypothetically acquiring a guy who would be an RFA at the end of this season and owed $10 million. Every team around the league saw what happens when you trade big at the deadline for players who are UFAs, like the Florida Panthers did last year with Claude Giroux and Ben Sherratt. They're currently sitting out of a playoff spot. It didn't work out for them last year, and they had to give up a ton in order to get those guys, and ultimately it was an overpayment. Yes, you want to go all in, you want to try to win now, but you cannot kill your franchise just to try to get some of these things done for guys who could potentially leave at the end of the year. I think that this trade is a little bit of a stretch. I appreciate the optimism here in getting Timo Meier. I want Timo Meier as well, but to me, this trade just doesn't work out. You're giving up far too much on that Matthew Knies stuff, on top of the picks and the current roster players that you'd have to move on from in said trade, and you'd be acquiring a player you really, really have no use for in Steven Lorentz as a 4th-line center in San Jose. How would that guy even fit in here in Toronto? I can't see that happening. I like the idea of Timo Meier, but let me know in the comments below what you would give up in order to acquire Timo Meier, if you think the Leafs should even target him, or if there's another player on your radar that you think they should go after. Let us know in the comments. Hit like on this video. Make sure to subscribe. We will be back here with more live streams after Leafs games, reactions, trade rumors, all that kind of stuff, especially as we lead up to the trade deadline. So make sure to like and subscribe on this channel. It is greatly appreciated. Leafs fans and people watching just from around the NHL, drop your comments below. Let me know what you think. Keep believing.